Welcome to video number 2 in our fractions unit. Now that we have reviewed some basics of fractions and introduced the golden rule, we're going to learn more about finding a common denominator between two fractions that you're trying to compare. This allows you to decide if one fraction is bigger or smaller than the other, or if they're both equal. Comparing fractions is all about the denominators. Remember, the denominator is the number on the bottom of the fraction. If the denominators are the same, we can simply look at the numerators to determine which is bigger or smaller. The first method for finding a common denominator is the multiplication method. This is probably the quickest way to transform two fractions into something comparable. You start by multiplying the numerator and denominator of the first fraction by the denominator of the second fraction. Then you multiply the numerator and denominator of the second fraction by the denominator of the first fraction. This sounds complicated, but let's take a look at an example to help clarify what this means. This is example 1. Take a moment to pause the video and see if you can find a common denominator using the multiplication method we just discussed. Now we have 3/4 and 4/7. The easiest way to think about this method is that we are basically starting out by multiplying the denominators together to get a new and different denominator that they both divide into evenly. So we have 4 times 7, 7 times 4, and that gives us 28 as our new denominator. Now, remembering our golden rule, which says that whatever we do to the bottom of each fraction, we must do to the top, we multiply across to get our new numerators. Now we can see that these are easily comparable, and this 21/28 is bigger than 16/28. Which means that our original fraction of 3/4 was bigger than 4/7. Another method for making two fractions comparable is finding the least common denominator, also known as the LCD. This is the lowest multiple that both denominators have in common. Finding the LCD allows us to simplify operations like adding and subtracting. To accomplish this, you are basically looking for a number that both denominators will divide into evenly. Let's take a look at an example. Take a moment to pause the video and see if you can find the least common denominator here. So we are comparing 10/12 to 5/6. Remember, to find the LCD, we have to look for the lowest number that both denominators will divide into evenly. So let's start by listing some multiples of each. Multiples of 12 are 12, 24, 36, 48, and so on. Multiples of 6 are 6, 12, 18, 24, and so on. So we can see that 12 is going to be our lowest common multiple. So we will put that at the bottom of each fraction. Remembering our golden rule, we have to make sure that we don't forget about the numerators. So for this one, we didn't change it at all, so we'll leave that the same. For the bottom one here, to get from 6 to 12, we multiplied by 2. So we must do that to the numerator as well, and we get 10. So our new fraction is also 10/12. So now we can see that the original two fractions actually represent the same portion of the whole, and we can say that 10/12 and 5/6 are equal. Now we will move on to simplifying fractions, which basically means reducing them to the smallest numbers possible while expressing the same portion. To simplify fractions, you will use the greatest common factor, or GCF. Factors are numbers that you multiply together to get another number. For example, 5 and 3 are factors of 15, 6 and 2 are factors of 12. You'll find the biggest factor that both the numerator and the denominator have in common and divide to reduce. Let's look at an example. Take a moment to pause the video and see if you can simplify this on your own using the greatest common factor. Okay, in this example, we want to simplify 10/12. We start by writing out the factors for both the numerator and the denominator. So factors of 10 would include 1 and 10, and 2 and 5. Factors of 12 would be 1 and 12, 3 and 4, 2 and 6. Now sometimes it helps to put them in order, and when we do that, we have 1, 2, 5, and 10 on the top, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 12 on the bottom. Now we can see that the greatest common factor for both of these numbers is going to be 2, because none of the other numbers over here match up. So now we know our greatest common factor is 2. We divide both the numerator and denominator. Across by 2. And we get 5/6. So when we simplify 10/12, we end up with 5/6. To recap, in this video we talked about comparing fractions by manipulating the denominators to make them the same. We learned how to use the multiplication method to determine a common denominator, how to find the least common denominator, and how to use the greatest common factor to simplify a fraction. Please continue to video 3 where we will discuss how to add and subtract fractions. Thank you.